Right. So JavaScript is a language that was originally intended for execution on the browser, right? And the original intent was to be able to programmatically manipulate the DOM, right? The document object model, the memory in-memory representation of the document by the browser. The browser parses the HTML and it makes an in-memory representation of that document and it renders it, right? And we can see. We could see a little bit what that DOM looks like, right? If we go to the element tab of our inspector, right, we'll see that on the left-hand side, right, the left-hand side is what looks like HTML, right? But notice the hierarchy of these sections, right? That have several layers of nested HTML elements. See that? So this is the object representation, its model, or what it interpreted as the raw HTML. The raw HTML, it's this, right? If you see view, if you right click and you see a page source, right? This is the raw HTML that was downloaded from the server. Right? This is the ASCII text code that was written by the developers. The browser parses this and tries to make sense out of this. Human beings might even make mistakes when they write this HTML, right? Especially if they're not aided by IDEs or special tools. We might make mistakes here and there, have wrong syntax or misspell something or put something in the wrong order, right? Programming languages have a certain syntax, a certain structure, and but the browser parses that HTML, and this is what it has, right? This is what it understood. Right. Hopefully, this representation is very close to the original ASCII code, right? But the browser are fairly forgiving, right? If you make mistakes or you misplace certain things, the page still renders, right? The browser makes best guess of what you meant, right? And it puts things where it should have been, right? If of what its best interpretation of what you meant to say. So what JavaScript allows us to do is to poke holes in this, right? Interact with this DOM here, right? And programmatically remove things or move things around or change styles or copy and paste and do things programmatically, right? And that was the original intent of JavaScript. Now, Angular, we haven't seen anything like this, right? Being able to manipulate the DOM from Angular, right? But deep down inside, Angular that's what Angular does, right? Under all those layers of abstraction, Angular truly needs to manipulate the DOM. That's it. That's how it renders things. Right? That's how we can iterate over things and copy and paste templates, copy and paste all over the place using ng repeat or all those things, right? All those ng attributes and whatnot. All those are abstraction layers, right? I'd like to look a little bit and look behind the curtain, right? What's beyond the curtain? What's happening a little bit more further down at the raw level, and what we have is manipulating the DOM using JavaScript. That's the basic technology, right? Where's it where the rubber hits the road or something like that. Right, so JavaScript is the low level language that manipulates all this, right? Now, early on, it was a lot of people were very excited about JavaScript, and they started using it to create all these sorts of dynamic web pages, especially for creating validating forms, right? So that folks, when they're filling out a form, we can catch those errors early on and give folks a feedback right away, and it just expanded from there. And today, JavaScript is a very powerful platform to create full-fledged applications, right? But as JavaScript progressed in history, there was a lot of browsers started to compete against each other, and you started having slightly different versions of JavaScript, right, from different vendors, right? Safari would have its own version. Chrome would have a slightly different version. IE would have a totally different version. And so us developers that were trying to write these applications, right, we didn't know what browsers were going to be used. We couldn't guarantee what browser were going to be used to render the applications we were writing, right? And it would work on Safari, but it would not it wouldn't work exactly in Mosaic, or it wouldn't work exactly on IE. So we started adding lots and lots of if statements, right? If it's this browser, then do this. If it's that other browser, do that. If it's this, our code was just lots and lots of if else, if else, if else, if else, right? It was a nightmare to code so that it would be consistent across all browsers, right? Not only the browser wars, but also different versions of JavaScript, right? You might be using an older version of the browser or a very new version of the browser, and the language changes slightly across different versions. So it was very hard to make a consistent behavior of our application. So we started looking and said, well, how could we systemize this? Could we instead of having all these if else, right? Could we put that inside of a function, right? And then have that function do all those if else, right? And what we would just do is just pass it certain parameters, and inside it would do all the nitty-gritty details of what version, what vendor, right? And figure it out and just do it, right? And I don't want to have to think about it ever again. Again, a layer of abstraction, right? Kind of abstracting the browser so that we don't have to think about the vendor or the version of the language. Yes, right. So fast forward, 10 years, and what we end up with jQuery. jQuery is exactly that. jQuery is a library that abstracts the browser, right? So that the same behavior is consistent across all browsers, all vendors, almost all versions, right? So that we don't have to think about which version, which vendor. We just have a function or set of functions, right, that will behave, more or less the same across all the different infrastructures. Make sense, right? So jQuery it's a very, very popular library. All right, chances are you will definitely be using it in web development, but it is very low level, right? It's as close to the browser as you'll get, short of actually using just JavaScript, right? Just raw JavaScript. But the reason you don't want to use raw JavaScript, again, is because you won't be able to have consistent behavior across all browsers, right? So to have a consistent behavior, we use this very thin layer of abstraction, jQuery, right? That manipulates the DOM directly, right? Allows us to programmatically interact with the browser at its most raw level, right? Make sense? All right. And underneath, that's what Angular does. Angular, right? Underneath, eventually, it uses jQuery to render as its rendering engine, right? It uses a light version of jQuery, right? It uses the essentials, right? The absolutely minimum parts of jQuery to be able to do its magic. So I'd like to spend some time talking about jQuery. Okay. So let's play around a little bit with jQuery. Let's see. Let's create here a directory. And in here, let's create a page. Hello. And in here, let's bring the jQuery library. I believe I have it under JS. There it is. I have jQuery JS. Okay, I've downloaded it. You can download it from jquery.com. Right, the latest version is 3.11. All right, so I'm just going to bring that library in, and it's a source. And let's go up one. No, let's go up one more. Okay, and do we have jQuery there? There we go, jQuery. All right, so let's put here h1, hello world. All right, so now let's navigate there. I've seen many of you running this page you should not run the page, right? You should always run the server and then navigate to the page, okay? All right, because but when you run the page, it starts out at a different port, right? And many of our libraries expect, right? A lot of our services expect the server to be running at 3000, right? At a particular port. So if you run just a page, right? You won't necessarily get all the features, right? So make sure you run the server, and then you navigate to the page, right? So this page is under public lectures jQuery hello. All right, so let's go on the local host, public lectures jQuery and hello. There we go. Hello. Okay, everybody okay? All right, we have just that page. All right, so let's start playing around with jQuery. All right, let's create a small script here to bring jQuery to life. Okay. So let's start here, and I'm going to do it in here in this inside of the HTML document. Not that you would ever do anything inside a script inside of the HTML document, but for academic purposes, I'll leave it here. All right. All right. So what jQuery does is that, like Angular, right? They declare a global variable, right, that it's accessible from anywhere. Right? Angular declares the Angular object. Yes. jQuery declares the jQuery object. Right. So if we do a console log jQuery, right, and we look at the console here, and I refresh, there it is. It's a function. jQuery is a function. It's a very, very powerful function. Right? You can do all sorts of magical things. All right. So let's start playing around with it a little bit. One of the things that it can do is, let's put this a little bit further down. Notice where I'm going to put the script tag down here. Okay. Right. I'm putting it down there because what jQuery is what it wants to do is be able to manipulate the DOM, right? To manipulate all the elements in a page. But way where it was way up there was no DOM yet. Okay. It's interpreted, right? The browser would parse your script. It would execute your script. Presumably your script would try to manipulate a DOM, but there is no DOM yet, right? Because I haven't gotten to body yet. See that? I haven't gotten to body yet, so there is no DOM to manipulate, right? Also, notice that putting it down there, it's a very common thing to do, right? Even the top level script over here, it's a very common thing to do to have all these scripts way down here, to load, make them the very last thing that gets loaded in the page, right? Especially if you have lots and lots of these libraries that might be, fairly large files that need to be downloaded, right? That need to be downloaded from the server, copied over to the browser, and the browser every time it finds these scripts, right, it executes them right away, right? It loads them, right? It interprets them and it executes them. So they take up a couple of milliseconds, right, to interpret them. So it eats away it adds more time for the page to be rendered, right? And if it could be just a couple milliseconds here and there, but they do add up, right? And especially if you have pages that are very trafficked, right? That have lots of hundreds of thousands of people that are coming to these pages. You want to make sure that you put something in the user's face as quickly as possible, right? Every millisecond might cost a lot of money, so it's a very common thing to put libraries way down there. Okay. Even though syntactically they should be in the head, right? All right, so let's do a couple things with jQuery. Let's see. One of the things that I could presumably do, something silly, would be that I can change the style. I can change an element's style using one of many of the functions associated to this object. Right? For instance, I can do CSS, and what do you think CSS does? Right? It manipulates the style. Right? For instance, Actually, sorry, I'm sorry. First of all, jQuery allows you to refer to things inside of the document. Right? It allows you to grab things from the from the element, so that I can then manipulate it. For instance, that H1 over there, I might want to do something with it programmatically, right? So jQuery allows us to pass as an argument the name of an element, H1. Now this function right here, we pass a string H1, right? And what this says is that you are grabbing all the H1s on the document. You are referring now to all the H1s. You grab them. What do you want to do with them? What do you want to do with them? Okay. One thing we could do, right, is to change its style, right, by using a function, a CSS, right, like you would think, right. It manipulates the style of that element you just grabbed. Okay, for instance, we can say that I want its color, right, to be red. Right. If I run this again, notice that it's red. Right. Obviously, I could have done this with a style sheet, right, in the CSS file, right. The point I'm trying to make is that we can do it programmatically. Right? We can have it follow some rules, right? If you click here, then this happens, right? If this happens, then do that, right? So that we can put if statements and for loops and switch cases and whatnot, right? We can programmatically do things. I could remove it. I can remove it from the DOM, right? It's gone. Right? Programmatically, I can remove it from the DOM, so it's no longer there, right? If I go to Elements and I go into Body, notice that there is no H1. It's gone. It actually removed it from the DOM, right? It's no longer there. I could change its content. I can change its content inside. So instead of says hello world, it says goodbye world. No. Hello again. So hello again, right? I can change the content of an element, right? The inside. So all this API, right? All these functions that I'm showing you, right, conform a large API of functions that allow you to interact with the DOM directly, right? Notice that we say that it's low level. We say that this library is low level because it's directly manipulating or referring to things that are in the DOM, things that we don't do in Angular, right? Angular, JavaScript, has no idea that you're rendering things with H1s or spans or divs. It doesn't really care about the DOM, right? It just provides an object. Yes, it is then the HTML template, right, responsibility to decide whether it's an H1 or UL or whatever it is. Okay. Right, but here we're doing this program from JavaScript. All right, a couple other things. Let's see. I can programmatically grab. Let's see. I can programmatically generate an element. I can generate an element. Okay. Oops. Right, what this does, right, is that notice the difference here, right? This one has pointy brackets. See that? It has pointy brackets. Right? So the jQuery function is smart enough to interpret the string that I pass it, right? And say, oh, okay, you're giving me fully qualified HTML here, right? So you must mean that you want to dynamically create an element, right? As opposed to H1, right, in line 13. Notice that it does not have pointy brackets, right? So the interpretation is that, oh, you're referring to something that already exists, right? That it's in the DOM. Right? So this function here, the jQuery function, is very, very smart. Right, so this one allows me to create an element. And let's see, if I render, notice that I don't see an element UL, right? Even in my DOM, I don't see any UL. Where is it? Okay. So if we want to add it to the document, we need to kind of like append it or somehow just stuff it inside of the DOM. For instance, notice that all content should go where? In the body. right, in the body, right? So for instance, let's create maybe an H2. Let's create an H2 and let's say this is dynamic heading H2. There we go. Right, and right now it's not doing anything, right? But we want to add it to the body, so maybe to show up under here, under the H1. So let's grab. We can grab the body. Let's grab the body. Now I have the body. Yes. And maybe I can store it in a variable, in a local variable. I can store maybe the H2 over here. I can store it in a local variable, right? And I can use manipulations such as, now that I have the body, I can add things to the body, right? I can append things to the body, right? I can append it at the bottom. I can insert it at the top. I can put it exactly where I want it, right? One of the methods that allows us to add things is append. Append allows us to add at the end of the body, right? So let's do H2, like that. And if I render, notice that indeed we did add the H2. See that? Right? We dynamically added content in there. Right? Notice that here's H1. There's our script, and after the script we have the H2. It actually added as the very last element in the body. See that? Like the name suggests, right? Append. Or we can add it at the beginning. Right? We can say, let's create another one. var paragraph. Let's create a paragraph. Let's grab, writing jQuery is so long. I don't have time to write 6 letters of which one of them is a capital, right? We computer scientists are we're very, very lazy. So instead of jQuery, right, there's a shortcut which is the $, right? The $, right, is an alias that allows us to use the same jQuery, right, but shorthand for jQuery. So we can say $. Let's create a paragraph with lorem ipsum. Okay. There we go. There's our paragraph. And we want to add it. Let's see. Instead of at the end of the body, I want to add it at the beginning of the body. Right. So I can say body.prepend, and I can add the paragraph. And it didn't work. What? Also prepend. Oh, okay. Thank you. Sorry. There we go. Right, we got the paragraph at the beginning. Right. If I look at the DOM, indeed the paragraph is right before the H1. Everybody okay? All right. Awesome. Okay. Notice that if we look at the actual source, the page source, we only ever got from the server. We only ever got the H1. Right? There is no H2. There is no paragraph. Right? This is what came down from the server. Right? We added everything afterwards. Right? After it was parsed by the browser. After we executed jQuery. Everybody good? All right. Okay. Something also that you will find often, right, is that all this code, right, will typically be embedded in a function, right? It will be embedded in a function, something like this, right? We'll say $, right, init, right, and then this whole thing will be inside of an init. This is very common piece of code that you'll see in the documentation, right? $, or the jQuery function, as I mentioned earlier, is a very powerful function, right? Depending what you pass it as arguments, it behaves differently. If you give it a string, it could be interpreted 2 ways, right? It could be interpreted as referring to something already in the DOM, or it could be a string that you're creating a new element, or if you pass it a function, instead, it says, "Ooh, okay, so that means the interpretation is that you want me to wait for the whole document to load." Right? Once the document completely has loaded, meaning the browser has parsed it, the browser has generated the DOM, right? The DOM is ready. the DOM is ready. Okay, so now I can take a look at it, right? Because the DOM is done, the browser is done, right? Let me have at it now, okay? And so what is going to happen here is that once the DOM is complete, we're going to get an event handler. We're going to get an event from the browser saying, "Hey, jQuery, I'm done with the DOM. You go now." Okay. So this function is kind of like a callback for us to be notified that, hey, the DOM is ready. Go ahead, do whatever you want with it, right? And what that allows us to do is to really put this script anywhere we want. We can put this script anywhere we want, right? We can put it way up here where it's supposed to go, right? Right. Remember, before it would not work here, right? For instance, if I put here a if I put here well, actually no. Here's H1. I was manipulating H1. If I move this H1 right, and I move it outside, I put it like over here, and I re-render. Notice that it's not changing it. See that? Right? Even though I am saying programmatic to grab H1 and change it to hello again, notice that it's not working. See that? The reason it's not working is that it's trying to manipulate an H1 that doesn't exist yet. Right? H1 is a couple of lines afterwards, right? This executes, it doesn't find the H1, it doesn't find it, so it just dies quietly. But if we move it inside of this init, right, it does work, right? And the reason is that that function is, we're using it as an event handler for when the document has loaded, right? What jQuery does is that it registers a callback, an event handler with onload, right? And once the document is completely loaded, the function calls, and then we can execute. Everybody okay? All right. All right. So let's do a couple more things here. Let's we can add. How about we want to add var movies, a list of movies, right? We have an array, and we have Terminator, and we have Alien. Aliens. That's the second one, right? We have Titanic, and we have Avatar. Right. I have a thing for James Cameron. So let's grab and let's add this as an unordered list, right? So let's grab and let's create a UL, right? Or my list, right? A list. The only reason I'm not using UL is that I don't want you to think that the name of the variable has anything to do with the actual element, right? Here I'm going to create an element, an unordered a list. There it is, right? Right, but so that you don't necessarily think that this UL has anything to do with the name of the element, right? I'm going to rename this as list. Okay, everybody okay? And then I'm going to iterate over my list. I'm going to say for var m in movies, right? I'm going to say as I iterate, I'm going to create a brand new line item. I'm going to say var a brand new line item. So there it is, my new line item. There it is. Okay, and then once I have the line item, I want to put the name of the movie inside the line item, right? Right. I could do it two ways. I could right here. I can just append it right here. I can say movies, right? Sub m like that, right? And then close it. Close the appropriate li. I could do it that way, right? Another way that I could do it is, which is a little bit easier to read, right? All these concatenation pluses are hard to read, right? They're hard to debug if somebody comes down. It's very easy to make a mistake, right? So perhaps a little bit easier to read would be to create that line item first, right? And then, append the movies sub s, right? Once I have the line items, we need to add the line item to the list, right? So we're going to say list. We're going to append the line item. And then once we're done, we need to add the list itself to the body, right? So we're creating the UL, adding all the line items to the UL, and then once we have the entire UL filled up, we're going to add the entire list to the body, right? We're going to append it to the end of the body. So we're going to say body.append list. And it didn't work. What? Where? What? Oh, this? Okay, thank you. There it is, right? There are the elements, and they have been dynamically added there. Everything okay? Yes. So, yes. Yeah. And we did, right? Oh, you mean here? It did. I didn't. Right. So it knows. It understands, right, that this is a line item, right? It creates a DOM representation of it, right? The only reason we have pointy brackets, that's for us humans to understand what it means, right? Once it becomes an object, right? All these pointy brackets are only for human consumption, right? It understands that it's an object. It understands that it has an opening and closing, right? But that's our visual way of capturing the fact that this is a hierarchy, right? That have parents and children and children and children, right? That they're nested one side of another. The opening and closing curly brackets or opening and closing tags and closing tags. Those are visual cues for us, right? Other cues that we use is indentation, right? But again, that's for our visual cortex to visually organize our things in the brain. But this is understood. I have an li element node, right? And then I'm going to append a child to that node, right? Yeah, there's no need to necessarily close it. Yep. Same thing here, right? We created the UL. I never closed it.
So is it Chrome actually taking care of this, or is Jquery?
No, Jquery is doing all that. Yeah, it's creating a Goddess elements node, right? And then just adds it to the DOM for you. There is no HTML ASCII code anymore, right? These are all objects that are being added to the DOM, right? The parsing of the ASCII code already happened, right? The only thing that the browser ever parsed was this H1, right? And then nothing else, right? Everything else was added programmatically using objects, DOM objects dynamically created. Everybody okay? All right. Jquery is very, very powerful. We could spend the whole semester just talking about Jquery. I'm only going to highlight a couple things here and there. We'll be reusing it throughout the rest of the semester, right? I'm just highlighting the minimal things that we'll need to go forward. I really want to be able to talk about directives later today. All right, so let's keep going. One of the other things that other behaviors that we can add to Jquery can be found in various extensions to the Jquery API, right? For instance, one of the more popular extensions to the Jquery library is the Jquery user interface library, right? Jquery UI, right? That allows us to add all sorts of really interesting behaviors to the DOM, right? So, for instance, this is their official website, and I encourage you to take a look at their documentation. Right, definitely the Jquery documentation, the Jquery UI documentation, just so that you know where to find things necessarily, not to become an expert, but to see what's available, right? For instance, let's go through some of these examples of what's possible with the Jquery user interface, right? For instance, let's go to Draggable. So Draggable is part of the library that allows you to just add very nice behaviors that allow you to drag things on the page, right? Or for instance, resizable, like the name suggests, right? It allows you to just resize something on the page, right? Or you can combine resizable with draggable, so that you can resize it and drag it around, right? So imagine you could, very easily come up with a Windows-like interface, right, when you have different widgets that you can drag around on the page, right? Another one that we're going to be using later on is sortable, right? That allows you to grab a collection of anything, right? Of line items, of divs, of spans, doesn't matter what. You can make them sortable, right? So that you can rearrange them and move them around, right? And then reposition them somewhere in the in the collection, right? Here's an example of a combination of sortable that can, and various sortables that can be moved around. It could create like a dashboard, right, of these widgets. One of them could be a calendar, the other one could be a news feed, right? Another one could be, images, different things, right? Okay, and sortable is what we're going to be using for the assignment, right? The assignment asks you so that you can be able to rearrange the widgets on the page. Remember, right? That's one of the assignment requirements. We're going to be using jQuery sortable to accomplish that. All right, so let's play around with some of these interactions. Also, this is very well documented. If you go to any one of these examples, right, and you look at the source, you just open up the source, and it shows you how to build this very simple example. The examples are all listed on the right-hand side. And for instance, this div over here is just this very simple div with a paragraph in it that says "drag me around." See that? The class is irrelevant. You don't need the class. But notice the ID. The ID says that this is draggable, right? The ID could be anything. It could be XYZ. It could be anything. It doesn't matter, right? So what's happening here is that here's jQuery, right? Here's our init function, right? This is our init function, and inside of that init function we have jQuery that is grabbing this element right here. It's grabbing this div. Notice the hash over here. See hash? See hash, right? That means that it's grabbing the ID, an element whose ID is draggable. There it is. That's the ID that's draggable. And then to make it draggable, just call .draggable. That's it. Now it's draggable. Right? Let's try it. Let's us try it. Right. So for instance, I already have the library jQuery UI. Script src equal, and let's go grab it, js/jQuery UI, right? And let's see, let's make the h1 draggable, right? So let's grab the h1 element, right? And we're going to say it's draggable. Right. So if I refresh, looks like nothing happened, right? But if I hover over my h1, I can now drag it around. Okay, or the paragraph. I can grab the paragraph and make it draggable. Notice that h1 was already there, right? h1 was part of the original ASCII that was downloaded from the server. Whereas the paragraph, where is it? Paragraph. Where's my paragraph? There it is, right? Over here, this paragraph was added dynamically, right? So you could apply these behaviors to anything, any things that were already there, right, or things that were added dynamically. Okay, so that if I refresh, and I close this, right, I can drag the paragraph around and just put it. Notice that things start to move around because see what happens, right? When I move it around, notice that this pushes up, right? And the reason for it is that it's being removed, right? The element is being removed from the normal rendering of the page, right? It's no longer in the original position, so it's no longer pushing anything below it, right? So this is dynamic heading was being pushed down by the header that was there, but it's no longer there, right? So it just pulls up. Okay. All right. So let's see. Also, instead of using p over here, I could just say the paragraph object that I had originally, right? Did I spell it wrong? Yeah, okay. Although that still works. All right. How about that UL that I had here, this list, right? If we go to jQuery UI, right, we'll notice that if we go to the sortable, we go to sortable, and we look at the example. It's pretty easy. So we have here a UL, right, with line items. And what are we doing here? Let's see. We are just grabbing the parent, right, the parent that has the line items. Here are the line items. So whoever the container is, you need to grab the container, which is this one. The UL is a container of all the children, right? It is a parent. And then once you grab it, you can just say .sortable. And then everything becomes sortable. Right? So let's try it ourselves. So I have the list here. And we just grab that. We can say list.sortable. Right? So if I go back and come back here, my elements are now sortable. Right? I can put them around. Right? I can move them around. Make sense? Yes. Yes. Yeah, I don't know if it's because I'm zoomed in or why, if the styling, oops. Yeah, I don't know. I need to look at why does it have styling that's there. Let me see if I grab something that is there already. Line item. Okay, this one's not draggable. This is draggable, right? This is sortable. And if I grab this class my list, right? Let's grab this list. Right? So I can grab the list by saying $. Now, how do I refer to this? Well, I could refer to UL. If I refer to UL, it means that all the ULs are sortable. If I want to be more specific, I can say, I can use class, right? So this is .class, the my list. So this is a language that we're already familiar with. What language is that? It's CSS, right? So jQuery uses CSS as the language to be able to refer to anything in the document, because CSS allows you to refer to anything in the document, right? Anything positioned in the document. So let's do that sortable. Oh yeah, it's doing it. Why is it doing it? The styling is weird. Also, it looks like it's yeah, no, yeah, it puts it like at the bottom, right? There it is. See that? Yeah, I don't know why it's doing that. You know, I might be using the wrong version of jQuery UI with jQuery. Yeah, let me find out. All right. All right. So this is jQuery. There's a very light intro to jQuery. So what we want to be able to do is use a lot of these behaviors as from within Angular, right? For instance, those widgets that we mentioned in the assignments, right? We want to be able to drag them around, right? And we sort of know already how to do it. Okay, it's a little bit different, right? In the assignment, these are divs, right? We have a div here, right? And these are all divs. Divs. These are all divs. jQuery doesn't care, right? It doesn't care. It just you just have to tell it who the parent is, right? And then anything that's inside becomes sortable, right? The immediate children become sortable, right? So if I re-render this, right, these become the elements, right? And I can just sort them again and move them around. Okay, make sense? All right. All right, so let's use this back in our assignment, and let me start a new movie for that.